I would like to welcome and to say good afternoon all. Some participants are still joining us, but I would like to give some guidelines before we start concerning the session. This session is being recorded as we intend to publish some videos after the event, and also we are planning to publish all the session on WestMED YouTube channel. The workshop will be held in English, and all the participants have their cameras and microphones switched off. So in case you have any question or want to shout to any of the speakers, please use the chat or the questions and answers tool that is available on the bottom of your screen. And now I would like to give the floor to Rui Azevedo, the Secretary General of Fórum Oceano, that is going to welcome you and to guide you along all the session. Rui, please.
Thank you, Sofia. So, welcome to everybody to the B2Sea 2020. Is the 10th edition of this event organized by Fórum Oceano and SETMAR from Galicia, and to this webinar about WestMED initiative priorities for next years. That is an event organized by the Portugal National Hub with the central team and the collaboration of the other national hubs of the WestMED initiative. As you know, the objective of this webinar is to present the main objectives of the initiative for the next few years, and also to profit the opportunity to share some priorities and ideas on how to go forward to boost cooperation within the West area of Mediterranean. The webinar is structured in three main blocks. The first one, a more institutional one, to present the vision of the institutions for next year. So we have a speech from the National Coordinator of WestMED in Portugal, DGPM. Also a speech from DG Mare and from Central Team. Then we move to a second block to have some speeches about the Green Deal and how it challenges WestMED initiative. As you know, Green Deal is the reference that should be taken into account to design the implementation of new programs and actions for next decade. So the objective of this block is to discuss how the Green Deal will impact WestMED initiative. And we have a focus on the themes of tourism, ports and maritime transport, aquaculture, and also an overview of some instruments to finance the blue economy. Then to finish, we'll have a third block that is an opportunity to the national hubs to present some ideas and projects to fit our work in the future. So we asked each national hub to present one idea of project, a flagship project for the Mediterranean, West Mediterranean, and we'll have 6 presentations, 7 projects that will be important to work further in the future and to nourish our activity in the working groups and the work between the central team and national hubs. So this is our program. So I think that we have to move to the first block, to the more institutional block, and I would like to give the floor to Conceição Santos, that is the Deputy Director of General for Maritime Policy, DGPM, as coordinator, national coordinator of the initiative in Portugal. So, Conceição, the floor is yours. For your speech, I ask you 10 minutes maximum, please. Okay?
Okay. Let me share with you a presentation I have here. I've been some difficult with this, but...
Conceição, are you seeing the option of sharing? Okay, yes. Okay.
Are you seeing now?
Yes.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today on behalf of the Portuguese National Coordination for the WestMED initiative. And my job is to present you the main priorities for Portugal in coming years to cooperate with the Mediterranean countries involved in the WestMED initiative.
4:30. Could have gone.
Several times people ask us how we see our cooperation in the Mediterranean in the context of the EU integrated maritime policy, namely in WestMED initiative, since we usually are more focused in the Atlantic. First of all, we have in consideration the long dialogue already we have in place between these 5 countries involved in the WestMED. We see that we have important aspects in common, which work for us as a background for the cooperation on the marine and maritime dimension. In this slide, you can see some of these aspects. We all have a Mediterranean climate. So, for example, desalination and green shipping are important for us. Diet with high fish consuming is also important. So, sustainable aquaculture and fishing and food security and local communities are important. Fostering a sustainable blue economy with resilience to climate change, coastal and maritime tourism, renewable energies are also a focus for us. And of course, we are neighbors and we share a Mediterranean culture with the maritime culture also. We promote regional cooperation. Marine environment is continuous with the Atlantic, and maritime surveillance is one of the topics relevant for us. So this is the background for us in terms of cooperation in the Mediterranean. Nowadays, we have under public consultation the National Ocean Strategy for the next decade. We have 10 strategic objectives, and this is for us the main perspective we have to cooperate also in the Mediterranean for the next decade, so for the next years. The National Ocean Strategy established the vision we should adopt in our action, and it is aligned with the main documents and compromises we have at international level, namely at EU level. And I emphasize here the Green Deal, the Integrated Maritime Policy, in what respect all the instruments it involves, and the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations. Following our through the structure of the main set I present, we work in Portugal in terms of marine and maritime cooperation in the Mediterranean. We deep support the 3 goals and 10 priorities of the WestMED, but in fact we are not involved in all of them in the same way. So we have to identify some priorities. So considering the top-down approach, we identify the following priorities for the Portuguese cooperation in WestMED context. Every action that tackle the COVID-19 crisis in order to recover, we consider very important to work in order to have in these countries strong maritime clusters that can establish links and support the long-term cooperation. This needs to work like glue, a muscle for the cooperation. Projects to develop aquaculture, namely projects that also include training, are important for us in this context. Green shipping is very supportive by us, namely considering the need to decarbonize the blue economy. Strengthen and enlarge the R&D networks in marine and maritime issues are very relevant, and marine environment projects to better know their dynamics and to reduce pollution are very relevant. And last but not least, institutional cooperation on maritime surveillance. So this is for us our main priorities for the next years in a perspective top-down. But we are always looking for projects, and we are looking to have good projects that should come from the ground. So this top-down approach needs to be combined with the bottom-up approach, which is to say that we need stakeholders involved, stakeholders interested to develop projects. We are in close cooperation with the focal point of the assistance mechanism to Portugal, and we identify in place an interest from our stakeholders to cooperate in maritime transport and ports, aquaculture, maritime technology, maritime cluster cooperation, R&D, and maritime surveillance. And here I show some projects that we found in a presentation from the Commission, which already have some Portuguese institutions. And to finalize, I would like to stress that now there are already Portuguese partners that are working to go ahead with the cooperation in the WestMED, and they are being followed and supported by the Fórum Oceano as a national focal point for this initiative. So this is the main points I would like to present to you, and I'm open for questions if you need.
Thank you. Thank you, Conceição, for your presentation. I think that it's clear the priorities from the Portuguese government. Well, I think that it's the moment to move to Isabel Vialon for your presentation. Isabel Vialon is Deputy Head of Unit Sea Basin Strategies, Maritime Regional Cooperation and Maritime Security of the GMARE. It's welcome to have your perspective about the future of the WestMED initiative, priorities. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all of you. I am glad to be with you this afternoon to discuss about the role of Portugal in WestMED. I wanted to start with a bit on this very special situation that is the one of the Portugal, because Portugal is part of two different sea basins strategies. I mean the Atlantic one and the WestMED the WestMED initiative. And contrary to, for example, to Spain or to France that have two different facades, clearly one in the Atlantic, one in the Med. For the case of Portugal, it's the whole territory that is covered, in fact, by the two sea basin strategy. And I think this is clearly an advantage for Portuguese actors, and it reflects the very strong maritime characteristic of this country. I mean, it's part of its history, but I think it's also its location and the fact that it looks at the two sides. I mean, both the south and the Med and the Atlantic. And for me, it's important to, when we think about what's the role of WestMED, it's important to keep those two aspects into consideration and to see how those two initiatives, those two sea basins are complementary to each other. In a way, the Atlantic one was launched much before. I mean, in the beginning of the last decade, It only involves EU countries, while WestMED was launched later, 2017, with 10 countries participating, 5 from the EU, 5 non-EU countries. And this is this very specific characteristic of WestMED. So I think it's important to highlight that and to see. I would be interested to hear from the different participants today how they see the added value of this WestMED initiative compared to, for example, the Atlantic strategy. And for at least for me, what I see very interesting is the framework that it offers to work and cooperate with the southern shore of the Mediterranean. Not only because it offers opportunities for business and economic ties, but I think also because we all know that we share common challenges in the management of those waters that are between the two shores of the Med. And I guess that it's important to have this framework where we can regularly talk and exchange views and cooperate, and also design common projects. So for me, I see it as very specific, and I hope that it can provide added value to all of you, notably in your links with Morocco, Mauritania, and the other countries from the southern neighborhoods. So that's the first thing I wanted to highlight, that I think is very important, also because we need to ensure coordination between also the two assistance mechanisms and the two instruments that are in place, to make sure that there is no overlap but synergies between the two sea basin strategy. Because if you look at also the priorities of the two sea basin strategy, they are quite different. So I think there is really scope for synergies and to avoid any overlaps. So that's the first point I wanted to raise. The second thing, because I mean, you asked us to express our priorities, and I think it's a way also for me to anticipate the second point of the meeting when you will discuss the European Green Deal. This is indeed a very important element of context at EU level. So we have the new Commission that entered into function at the beginning of the year, with a new set of priorities, and clearly one that is in the center is the European Green Deal and the ambition to have a European carbon neutral Europe by 2050. So that's clearly very important. And of course, the second aspect of context that is very important also is the COVID-19 and the impact it has on our economy. So as you know, we are also closely working with member states to address the situation and prepare recovery for Europe. So those two elements are very, very important, and they have an impact on our maritime policy at EU level. We are at the moment at the Commission, we are preparing a new communication, a new approach to what we call sustainable blue economy, that is a bit our vision or answer to those two key challenges, European Green Deal and recovery, to see how the blue economy can contribute to that. So both contribute to recovery and to the achievement of the objective of the Green Deal. And we see that clearly blue economy can play a role, not only because we think that the traditional sectors need to transition to more sustainable practices, but also because we think that emerging sectors of blue economy can also bring solutions to the challenge we face. So that's the two aspects, and we have to see how we can mobilize our different tools, both policy making and funding at EU level, to support this transition. So that's clearly for us at the Commission level the priority. We have started discussion with the member state on that, and we have also organized a webinar to discuss with stakeholders. There is an ongoing consultation on the roadmap, and we are waiting for feedback from the different actors to prepare and finalize our communication. So that's, of course, it's more EU internal process, but this has also an impact on the way we want to collaborate with our at regional level. And this reflects also discussions that are ongoing in the Mediterranean region in context, as some of you may know, in the context of the Union for the Mediterranean, we bring a ministerial declaration on sustainable blue economy. So those aspects, those issues that we discuss at EU level, they are also discussed with our partners in the Med region, and it's good to see that there is a common concern about all those issues: climate change, environmental degradation, impact of COVID, and to see that there is a will to continue cooperation on at regional level to try to address those problems. So that's a bit on my side, the two main points I wanted to make in this introduction. But of course, if you have any question, I remain available.
Okay, thank you very much, Isabelle Vialon. We note these two important ideas concerning the complementarity between the two basins, Atlantic and Med, and Portugal plays a role that would be maybe important, because we are very concerned by Atlantic, but we are also a part of Med, WestMED. So maybe we can work in more close way with the Atlantic assistance mechanism to go forward with some common initiatives that I think that would be useful for both. And also the role of the blue economy to contribute to the Green Deal and the recovery plan. I think that are challenges, relevant challenges for us, for our work. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now I move to Javier Fernandez, that is Technical Director at Ecorish and the project leader of the WestMED initiative, the central team. So Javier, please.
Yes.
10 minutes.
Yeah, Chairman. Yes, I will respect fully the 10 minutes that have been allocated. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation, for being here. Well, I actually see that quite a few names from the team of the WestMED Maritime Initiative Assistance Mechanism are on the agenda. And also we have a dedicated session towards the end whereby colleagues are going to put forward a number of proposals that could strike some interest from Portuguese colleagues and friends in order to stimulate future preparation of projects. So you introduced us saying that we were going to deliver some sort of institutional speeches. In my case, I just want to be very practical and explain to the participants what the assistance mechanism is and what has been done, because maybe not everybody is fully familiar with it. Let me put the show. Yeah. Okay, so we have been discussing about the Atlantic assistance mechanism. Of course, Portugal is regarded to be an Atlantic country, but with very strong and traditional and historic links with the western part of the Mediterranean. So back already with the Convention of Barcelona and all the process of Barcelona and the 5+5 dialogue, Portugal has always been there in this policy debate. So as regards the WestMED initiative, and if we can just summarize it in a couple of words, we could say that it is an innovative cooperation instrument between countries, member states and partner countries in the two shores of the Mediterranean regions, meaning subnational entities of government and people of the Western Mediterranean to facilitate the blue economy. And probably one of the uniqueness of the WestMED is the map that you have in front of you, because through the efforts of the European Commission together with the UFM and following the declaration on the blue economy in the Mediterranean in 2015. This WestMED Maritime Initiative saw the light already in 2017, making a difference. Now, all the countries that you see in the map are cooperating in the framework of the initiative, trying to bring the sustainable development of the blue economy to the next level. So the actual fact of generating dynamics of cooperation on its own, it can already be considered an achievement on its own, as you could agree with me. No? And this was done with the full understanding that a stronger cooperation was essential and is essential and will continue in the next few years, essential to harness the full potential of something which is believed, which is a sector of the economy, which is going to bring growth and jobs in the whole world, in the whole EU, and also in the sea basin and the sub-sea basin of the Western Mediterranean, which is the blue economy and its different sectors. 1 minute to explain a little bit about the process back in 2017. Let's call it this way. The whole thing started with the adoption of the communication and the framework for action, which set the path for the cooperation that I've just mentioned in between those countries. In 2018, in Algiers, the Stakeholder Conference, December, adoption of the roadmap with 6 priorities by the regional ministerial meeting, whereby the countries agreed on a number of avenues of cooperation in the sub-sea basin. The next year, the WestMED assistance mechanism, our team was set up, and is actively supporting the steering committee of the initiative in trying to bring things forward. From September 18, 19, and 20, the team is working with throughout the, if I may, the 9 national hubs, in the different countries with clear identification of tasks and working towards the accomplishment of all the objectives set up. The framework for action and the communication contain 3 very broad objectives that you can see in front of you. As a conditio sine qua non, the first one, safer and more secure maritime space, in order to allow things to happen. Always to, in the spirit of the EU 2020 also strategy, a smart and resilient economy, a smart and resilient blue economy, second objective. Then as a third one, to try to achieve a better governance of the whole thing, of the whole initiative. They're trying to bring the different layers of government in the cities, in the regions, at country level, to all work together towards the achievement of the same objectives. And then the 6 priorities as outlined in the roadmap. Now we'll go more into the detail. Maritime safety and security, everything related to environment, biodiversity, and climate change, skills development and circulation, sustainable tourism, transport and fight against pollution, of course, fisheries and aquaculture, and as a very close cutting priority, the setup and support of existing and new created maritime clusters and networks to allow actors and different stakeholders to work better together. Again, if you allow me to spend 1 minute, being allowed on the time that I've been allocated, there is a steering committee which is really at the heart of the whole WestMED Maritime Initiative, whereby the European Commission, the UFM, WestMED, the European Commission, MARE, national coordinators, they sit together every 2-3 months in order to discuss about the general guidelines and the ways forward of the initiative. Then there's an overall management whereby Isabel Bayon and colleagues at the ASME and the central team, we kind of meet regularly in order to try to discuss about the activities and the ways ahead. And then we have the operational management, which is the WestMED assistance mechanism, which is the team which is structured about the central team with colleagues sitting in various points of the EU, and the national hubs that I briefly kind of showed to you before. The national hubs are meant to mobilize and liaise with local and national stakeholders and facilitate the local implementation of activities. And they are fundamental, as you can imagine, in the implementation of the instance mechanism, because we always want to see that the initiative as a whole can be considered like a combined effort, a combined top-down and bottom-up effort. No, top-down because, of course, the capitals have a word to say, and as Ms. Santos was explaining before, Portugal, as the rest of the countries, they have some priorities, national priorities, no? But these priorities are fully combined with those of the other countries, and also from the expectations of the actors on the ground. That's why the role of the national hubs is absolutely crucial, no, in the whole development of the activities. Also going into the uniqueness, no, of the dynamic of cooperation here is the fact that the European Commission has managed to, put there for you, like a team, a whole team in the territories that can be, contacting and are there to support. And I've just took the liberty of, putting down the names there, so you see that before the big words, that there's people there willing to help and coordinate efforts in the framework of the initiative. What are we discussing? What we'll be discussing in the near future as priorities? Well, as Ms. Santos was saying, and also Ms. Bayon, yeah, I mean the themes are quite varied, no? But today, as we speak, we are talking, we are working on green shipping, on tourism accelerator, on sustainable and innovative aquaculture, on an innovation platform, maritime technologies, and of course, as a cross-cutting element, the cooperation across maritime clusters in the Western Mediterranean. For many of these, there are already webinars which are going to be taking place in the next weeks, months. We have a webinar on tourism for December. There's one in clusters for the 30th of November. Next Monday, we have a new meeting of the technical group on sustainable transport. We will be also discussing aquaculture projects in early December. So, there's a whole variety of activities taking place around these themes, which of course today are these, but the priorities for the next months, next years, of course, will be, it's work in progress. The Green Deal is there. We will be hearing from colleagues on the session 2, but we are, I think, all looking in the same direction. Looking now at the clock, I brought with me like some elements so you could see the names, but maybe I can stop at our national hub national of Portugal, and for obvious reasons, and there as well we have Rui Acevedo, who is actually chairing the meeting today, which is Secretary General of Fórum Oceana. We have Frederico Pinto Ferreira and Sofia Maciel, no, who have been working already with us, but since the beginning in early 2019, yeah, and will continue to do so in the next couple of years. Now, if I can give you in the 2 minutes that I have.
1 minute, Javier. 1 minute.
Just to give you in a glance, like some of the projects that we have been working. We have this technical group on sustainable transport and green shipping, whereby national groups of stakeholders have been set up, coordinated by the national hubs, and they discuss about medium-term scenarios, common initiatives, and cross-border projects. For instance, we supported the conceptualization and the consortium partner search of the Blue Roses project, which brings a new concept for leisure tourism by integrating robotics and IoT, Internet of Things, to explore underwater sites by piloting remotely operated vehicle, or the project NewTech Aqua, funded by H2020, bringing aquaculture to the next step and incorporating new technologies, the technological solutions, or FUFRA, which we are kind of proud of this one, because as you can see in the countries, it involves all the countries in the Western Mediterranean. It brings the academies and it brings a coordinated training effort to fight illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing in the Sastre Basin. The first project was like a pilot that has been badly impacted by COVID-19, because we were meant to have physical workshops in the South countries in order to do these trainings, but the timing has been postponed due to the sanitary crisis. And then some funding programs that we are closely looking. You won't be surprised to see that we're looking at H2020 or LIFE, Interreg, or maybe for us it is the NECBC MED, and the European Neighborhood Instrument Cross-Border Cooperation Program, which is really like the program for us, as it kind of allows to partners from the North Shore and the South Shore to cooperate on equal foot. Yeah. Some open opportunities is the COSME call for proposals. I'm sure that colleagues can discuss about this further along the road in the workshop, or the Horizon 2020 call for proposals on the European Green Deal, or this one which came just out of the oven is the Blue Economy window, where we will be having an info day next 24th of November. And I think this is what I wanted to say right at the beginning. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm open for questions, if any, from
Thank you, Javier. Thank you. I think that we have few minutes to put some questions and to have some answers. The floor is yours. Who wants to put some question? I see that in chat there are no questions, but if someone wants to profit this opportunity, please do it. If not, I have one question, one comment, one question. Maybe I can put it and to have some reaction from the speakers. And the point I have is something that was raised in by our stakeholders in some workshops and seminars we have here in Portugal, and is the following: how to achieve a better alignment between the projects proposals under WestMED initiative and the selection criteria of the different UA programs and calls. Because what people say is that there is a lot of work to prepare these applications within WestMED initiative, and then they see that the way our projects are evaluated don't take in consideration this fact, this work undertaken within WestMED initiative, and this is a political initiative, so it's important that there are some projects from this basing. So the question is it possible to imagine to include in the selection criteria of the different calls some plus, some bonus to the projects that are proposed by WestMED initiative or built within WestMED initiative. Because this is also a way to show to stakeholders the relevance of cooperation, that they should cooperate because the cooperation is appreciated by the political level. So it's a comment and a question. I don't know if you want to comment, please. Isabel, thank you.
Yeah, I fully understand the background. I mean, for this request, that I can indeed imagine that sometimes stakeholders are disappointed not being selected. But I think it's important to remind two things. First, most of the calls that are launched by the EU are based on competition. So it's not because that's the project proposal comes from WestMED that it will be selected or will be given more points or whatever, because it's a competitive process. And this is very, I mean, it's not even, nobody, I mean, the evaluators are external people that are doing the evaluation, and we can't interfere in that. So that's important to know and to respect, because that's the way all the selection process take place. Of course, the question is about the criteria. So, for example, when DG Mare, and this has been done in a number of cases where we sometimes we launch calls that are dedicated to certain sea basins. So we call for a specific project in the Med or in the Atlantic and so on, insisting on the importance of regional cooperation and so on. So when we do that, clearly we take due consideration to those aspects of regional cooperation and so on. So the criteria, in a way, take into consideration this aspect, and in principle, they should favor, I mean, projects that come from the different sea basins. But here again, if there are very good projects that involve the different countries, but they are not prepared by WestMED, I mean, this is not so. We can influence in the sense that we can make it well designed, coherent with the priorities of the sea basin strategy, coherent with the scope and so on. But then the process will always remain competitive. And what we can do, so in this type of calls, the regional calls, it's more difficult to, it's not the case for example, when you, it's not always the case when, for example, you apply to project design under Horizon Europe or other type of funding from the EU that are not directly addressed to blue economy actors or to sea basins that have a bigger framework. So in that case, indeed, sometimes you don't have a specific criteria on regional cooperation. And then, of course, it may make the selection of the project more difficult. And this, unfortunately, this is difficult to influence. Also from our side, we can't interfere in the process, because those funds have broader objective. So sometimes, indeed, it's still possible for project developed under the WestMED to apply and be selected. But each EU funding tool has its own priorities, own setup, and this is more difficult for us to influence. So I don't know if I replied to your question, but I think it's something that you have to take into account. I mean, it's like that. Huh?
Okay, thank you very much. Understood. I don't know if Conceição or Javier want to comment something.
Maybe just, sorry.
Conceição, please. Conceição.
In our case, we are not operational programs. Of course, we also, like DG Mare, we influence in certain way the design of the operational programs, but then they have their own life, and they are in a competitive process. In some funds that they are with us, that are at national level, or for example, year grants is the same. We try that they are aligned with the priorities of Portugal and stakeholders. But in this case, the projects are not very aligned for cooperation with other countries. They are not dedicated specifically to cooperation, for example, in WestMED.
Okay, Javier, thank you.
Yeah, no, just something to complement Isabella Conceição. I mean, there's also a potential way forward towards your question in the actual programming, no, of the, for instance, if we think about the Interreg MED program or the ERDF regional programs, for instance, in Spain, for the Atlantic coastal regions, when they want to do something related to the blue economy, and they put forward a proposal, a regional proposal for the regional program, they need to justify also how they're contributing towards the overall objective of the Atlantic strategy, you know. So we probably will be seeing something similar happening for instance, in Spain, in those regions, the coastal regions of the Mediterranean facade, no, when the new round of ESIF programs see the light. Other than that, to ask project promoters to justify or to indicate how they're going to contribute towards this overall objective, as Isabel was saying, we live in a competitive world, and the competition is good for everybody because it stimulates good project proposals and makes the stakeholders better. No, so it is really difficult to tackle or to say like, okay, if you have the blessing of the WestMED, then you will get some extra points. That's a little bit difficult.
The countries that, oh yeah, but I mean, there is no dedicated budget for WestMED or whatever. And indeed, because it's not a project, it's a political initiative. So that's the difference. Huh? It's a political initiative that is indeed supported by a number of projects, but it's two different things. But still, I mean, we are listening to this complaint from the countries and so on, and we are trying to address it. Huh? So Javier rightly pointed that, for example, in the new Interreg regulation that is still under discussion, but there is a clear recognition of the Sebastian strategies are key elements that should be supported by Interreg programs. And for example, there is also, so there are more and more knowledge about those Sebastian strategies, and more possibilities for benefiting from different funding sources. And then another thing is that, at least as far as DG Mare is concerned, under the new the EMFF, so the European Maritime Fund for Fisheries and Maritime Policy, we try on a regular basis to have dedicated calls for that support Sebastian strategies, and we will do that next year. So we have earmarked a budget to support the 3 Sebastian strategies. So for WestMED, for the Atlantic, and for the Black Sea. So we will launch a dedicated call to support one of the priority of WestMED. But here again, it doesn't mean that necessarily the project that will be selected will be the one, or because there may be different projects also supported by the assistance mechanism. So then it will be competition. But clearly, at least, we will make sure that the project that is selected will contribute to the priorities and of the WestMED.
Thank you, Isabel. I think Rui is already with us.
Yes, I'm sorry, I lost the connection. There are some problems with the connection. Thank you very much for your comments and for your speech. I think that we have to move to the second session about Green Deal, challenges for WestMED, and we have 4 speeches. The first one is about tourism, and I ask Stephanie Vela from the National of Malta The floor is yours, please, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thanks, Rui. I'll just share my screen. So just one moment, because I got the wrong presentation up.
Okay.
It's one for afterwards. Okay.
Okay, Stephanie, I ask you 10 minutes maximum, please.
Yes, sure. Okay. Apologies for that. I'm not sure whether you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So first of all, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to be able to discuss the importance of the WestMED initiative, particularly in terms of specific areas such as tourism. When it comes to tourism, I think it has been particularly evident more than ever at this point in time in terms of the vulnerability of the tourism sector. So with the shock that has basically come literally out of the blue and that's presented by COVID, it's become very, very apparent that the sector is very, very, very vulnerable. And this is obviously evident at the level of the EU, but it's also evident as well, even within the maritime confines as well, where you have coastal areas as well as islands, which are definitely feeling the brunt of it. I mean, it's enough to say that at the level of the EU, you've got out of every 10 euros which are generated, 1 is actually generated by the tourism sector. And it's also estimated that there's a loss of about 1 billion euros every month, which is being suffered by the tourism sector on account of COVID. So obviously it's a shock which more than ever is highlighting the vulnerability of the sector. Now, this is obviously extremely particular in several EU countries, such as those which are in the Mediterranean area and include key touristic destinations. I mean, it's enough to say, in our case, in Malta's case, for example, it's enough to tell you that out of every 7 jobs, 1 is literally dependent on the tourism sector, and that is no joke. So the impact of COVID on the tourism sector in Malta has been rather catastrophic. And the reason why, to an extent, there has been an element of resilience in the sector is through the provision of support, which is being directed specifically to the sector. But the fact that we are so dependent on tourism, and this is not just a reality which Malta faces as an island, but other islands within the Mediterranean as well as coastal areas which focus so much on tourism, is the fact that there's obviously this dependence, but this dependence also in itself creates its own vulnerabilities. So again, in Malta's case, for example, we face inbound tourists of about 2.7 million every year, which is 5 times more than the population that we have in Malta. Most of those tourists are in summer, so they are basically in the summer months. And this obviously creates a lot of pressures on the infrastructure, whether it's road infrastructure, it's the water infrastructure, and it's the way. So again, there's an element of vulnerability which is evident there. And then there are obviously the vulnerabilities which we have been speaking about for a good number of years now as well. And this is where the European Green Deal is obviously very much entwined with it, but obviously there's the vulnerability which is more pronounced for the tourism sector when it comes to climate change effects, for example, such as flooding, for example, droughts, increase in temperature, which is becoming more and much more evident as time goes by. And again, this is obviously more evident for the coastal areas and for islands. But then there's also another added element of vulnerability in these areas, and this is due to the fact that most of the sector is basically pioneered by SMEs and micro enterprises. And they themselves are also very vulnerable to the economic and to the financial as well as to the political changes. And because they are SMEs and because they are micro enterprises, they also lack the ability to be able to tap into economies of scale, you know, the opportunities which are available through economies of scale. And obviously then this builds up, you know, we've the vulnerability of the sector is there. It's probably much more evident in the tourism sector than it is in other sector. And this obviously builds much more on the importance of building the resilience of the sector. And what do we mean by the resilience here? Well, basically, it's the ability to withstand these type of shocks. Some of these shocks we know are more of a long-term nature, giving us much more time to be able to plan for them. But for example, when it came to COVID, it's a short-term shock, which has left a devastating effects. So I think when it comes to building resilience, and this is obviously even where the WestMED plays a very key role here, because it has a key role in identifying the areas where the policies or where resilience policies can be addressed. There has to be acknowledgement of the fact that we are obviously operating within a wider framework. And in this regard, there are obviously a number of initiatives which are currently also going on, and in which any resilience policies which are being driven at the national level and even at the EU level, obviously has to take into account these initiatives. Specific to tourism, there's obviously the European Agenda for Tourism, and the dialogue has already started. Very recently, there was the launch of the dialogue as well in terms of the sustainable recovery of the sector. It's looking in terms of the longer term sustainability of the sector in terms of a time frame of up to 2050. And it's very important for us to understand what are the three main focus areas where the discussion will be heading there. And one of the most important areas is obviously this issue of resilience. So it's building the resilience of the sector. The second area is sustainability and green transition, which again is very important within the context of coastal areas and islands. And the third one, which has become a sine qua non, but is definitely the key to success within the foreseeable future, is the digital transition and the element of innovation which is required in that respect. But the European Agenda for Tourism is not a policy which should be seen in silo in terms of what is happening in other areas. So as pointed out previously as well, even the European Agenda for Tourism has to function within the functions of the Green Deal, which is obviously going to be setting the agenda of where we will be heading in the next years which are coming up. And the objectives of the European Green Deal are obviously quite important objectives. So when we're speaking about no net emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050, we're not speaking about a very long time frame. It's 20 years ago, 30 years ago wasn't that far, you know, it wasn't too long ago. 30 years in the future will obviously creep up on us as well. And it also means that we have to have economic growth, which has been the emphasis for a number of years, that it has to be decoupled from resource use. And this again is an important element for the tourism sector, because tourism has been one of the pioneering sectors which has driven growth. But obviously within the agendas that we're working with and within the shocks that we're more exposed to than ever before, then it's very important that the growth of the sector is undertaken in a very sustainable manner. And I think within this framework of initiatives, we also have to really emphasize that the sustainable blue economy will have to play a very, very important central role in the Green Deal. And there's no two ways about this. I mean, the blue economy is a very strong, has to be a very strong anchor and a very strong push and a very strong recipient as well of anything which comes out of the Green Deal. I think the words of the Commissioner in this regard is very important here. And what was mentioned is that we must put the green in the blue, and we must also put the blue in the green. And I think those are very, very prominent words which are very, very important. Again, we are working within this framework of initiatives, so the European Green Deal and the, you know, the tourism agenda and all of this. But when you really hone it down, I think this something which is very important, which is lessons which are coming out as well from the WestMed initiative, which we have experienced even as national hubs at the local level over the last few years, is that the challenges which are being faced are rather common challenges, you know. The vulnerabilities which we are experiencing are very common vulnerabilities. COVID has affected us all. Climate change challenges is affecting us all, some more than others, but it's affecting us all. And common problems really need joint solutions. It's really not effective to have everybody developing their own solutions in a very staggered or fragmented manner. And I think this is very important within the concept of the WestMed initiative, because the initiative seeks to bring all of these stakeholders together, and it seeks to identify these common problems, and it seeks to provide support in order to be able to identify these joint solutions. I think also in this respect, we have to build as well on the coexistence with other blue economy sectors. So for example, when it comes to coastal tourism, there has to be this overarching bridge with other sectors within the blue economy as well, whether it's related to spatial conflicts, for example. So there's this need for looking in terms of, not looking at the sectors in terms of silos, tourism on its own, shipping on its own. I mean, it's clearly the sector is so dynamic that these sectors are all dependent on each other. Tourism, a big chunk of tourism is related to cruise liner activity. You need to have cruise liners which are green in order to have a sustainable tourism sector. So there's obviously the coexistence of these blue economy sectors and the importance of them being complementary in nature rather than even competing for funds, for example. There's obviously definitely the need for coordination, which is not only required among member states and across regions, but I dare to say as well, even across the number of stakeholders which are within the maritime sector. Again, there's the importance of complementarity in this regard. I think another important element as well is the identification of best practices. There isn't the need to reinvent the wheel most of the time, but more often than not, it's very important to identify the best practices and allow for a wider spread of the benefits. And this is, for example, something which is becoming very much prominent and very much evident even across the WestMed, because of the importance of identifying these practices and disseminating these benefits, not only for countries which are in the Mediterranean, but which are from the northern area, but as well emphasizing the importance of spreading these benefits as well with southern partners as well. And I think the last point that I would really like to emphasize is that—
You have to finish, Stephanie.
Okay. Is that we really need to identify and continue to build on the synergies which exist across the initiative. So we are not working again in silos. An important point was brought out in the beginning of this workshop in terms of where the synergies exist even across, for example, the Atlantic and the WestMed, for example. But I think it goes beyond that as well. And I think, again, here, the WestMed is playing an important role. For example, last week, we collaborated as well with the BlueMed, for example, on a webinar related to COVID and tourism. And in December, as Javier pointed out, we'll have another one, which is going to focus much more on strengthening ties with our southern partners. So with that, I'd like to conclude. And once again, thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, Stefania, Vela. And I think you point some very important aspects, issues that should be taken into consideration in the future approaching the tourism sector and the blue economy. I highlight what you said about a need of a cross-cut approach to the blue economy, very important, and also the need of a better coordination between stakeholders. It's something that it's important to work together. Thank you very much for your speech. Now we have to move to another theme, ports in maritime transport. And I ask Mario Dogliani, it's the Director General of CS Mari Foundation from Italy. Yes, Mario, the floor is yours. 10 minutes if possible, okay?
Thank you, Rui. Thank you, everybody. Many thanks for inviting CS Mari to this event. And here we are. I will try to keep the 10 minutes. I think you are seeing the presentation. So SDG for Med, Sustainable Development Goal in the Mediterranean. Very quickly, Fondazione CS Mare, we were born in 2017 to help SMEs. So perfectly in line with what Stephanie just said. By the way, Stephanie, you have a very important surname in our business. Everybody reminds Carmelo Vella. And we do it from Brussels, and we try to involve SMEs in the European way of thinking, in the process of decision, and of course also in projects. Having said that, let's come to transport and the Mediterranean. Let me just say, what is the Mediterranean? The Mediterranean, as you know better than me, is only less than 1% of the sea in the world. However, is 7.5% of the biodiversity of the sea in the world. So Mediterranean is, first of all, a big resource for humans, is its biodiversity. Mediterranean is the second most trafficked area in the world after the Chinese Sea. 13% of the world traffic, just to make a comparison, in the Baltic is 4%. And as also, again, you know very well, small-scale fishing in Mediterranean accounts for more than 60,000 fishing boats, 75% of which are older than 25 years. And Mediterranean is expected to be, we are expected to be 650 million people in 2050. We were 215 million in 1950. So it's a big source of economic and wealth potentially. And Mediterranean, unfortunately, is since ever theater of tension. So what Mediterranean will be? It was already said, and we hope it will be net zero emission by 2050, the whole Mediterranean, not just the European Union one. And what does it mean? It means that today emissions in EU are 40% are due to ourselves, eating and cooking, cooling and so forth. But then 22% is due to transport, road, rail, and air. 5% is due to maritime transport. But this 5% is important. And as it was said, is also condensed. A big cruise ship is a big source of emissions. So, how to do? First of all, Mediterranean, as we said, we need stability, we need to preserve biodiversity, and we need to exploit fully all the potential economic development, including tourism. This means we need to implement sustainable development goals. One important meeting last year, almost 1 year ago, in Napoli, was made, which decided that Mediterranean will become probably an emission control area. And this is totally in line with the Green Deal and is very important for tourism, for transport and for tourism as well. Now, this is the biggest cruise ship in the world. Again, Stephanie, I am taking from your presentation. This ship has 110 megawatt installed power. This is Madeira, 290 megawatt. So 3 of those ships have more power than Madeira. Would you go Madeira, would Madeira go on batteries in the next 5 years? I don't think so. So those very big ships, forget about batteries. Of course, batteries can be made on fishing boats and so forth, but forget about those big ships. We need to do something else. LNG, yes. Today I am with Madeira. This is Madeira. This is refueling of the first LNG fueled cruise ship in the world. And this was made by LNG. And if LNG is from bio source, so totally renewable, this is going to be a possible solution. A possible solution. There are others, of course. Now, we need a coherent strategy, and there is things moving quite a lot. We need a coherent strategy in the Mediterranean. An important point to us was the very recent June, a memorandum of understanding between all our member states from Europe on the islands. This memorandum of understanding is quite significant because it says that islands should become, as far as possible, energetically autosufficient, building on renewable energy. And this, we believe, is very important for the whole Mediterranean, not only for Ireland. So this is certainly a possible achievement to arrive to. And that's why we, CSMARE, development SDG for Med, Sustainable Development Goal for the Mediterranean, a bottom-up initiative for small and medium enterprises, for small municipalities. We did this together with the Fondation Philippe Cousteau, with whom we signed an agreement on 28th of July, and we did with, we are looking forward to do it together with Fórum, with whom we signed an agreement 16th of December. What are we going to do from the small thing we can do? That is what we are aiming at in the next years. We are aiming to promote synergy between EU and non-EU Mediterranean countries to facilitate the adoption of ICA in the Mediterranean. We are going to promote, to help the small municipalities, islands, and so forth to develop their own energy production from their own renewable energy. We are going to promote preservation of marine biodiversity. And of course, we are going to promote exchange of good practice, such as in this fantastic B2Sea. Congratulations. So just the last slide is Portugal. As far as I know, Portugal is a very small country, but is the 5th largest economic zone in Europe, the 3rd largest in the EU. Is a huge thing. And Portugal is, it was already said, is both Mediterranean and Atlantic. It is the connection we need. And Portugal is since a long time focusing on blue economy and maritime transport as a joint priority. So I think that this, my speech could not better be done than in this event in Portugal, where ideally I am, because this is really the place where we can start a very big and important travel, helping the small to achieve the sustainable goal in the Mediterranean. So stay tuned, please. We are going to do something, we hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mario, and thank you very much for your kind words. They stimulate us to continue going forward to work for blue economy, and we'll do it sure, and in cooperation also with CSMARE. So thank you very much. We move to the third theme about aquaculture, and we go to the other border of the Mediterranean. And I ask Malouli Idrissi, please, from National Love of Morocco, for the speech. The floor is yours, Malouli.
You can hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for your invitation, and for me and for us in Morocco, it's very important to change experiences between North and South and WestMed countries initiative. There are lots of things to share and lots of ideas. Now we need also funding because it's very important to improve all ideas in projects. For me, I prepared some slides concerning aquaculture and this relationship with the blue economy, especially for Morocco. It can be very priority in our strategy, in our general fishery and aquaculture strategy, government strategy, because especially in Mediterranean side, because the situation in Mediterranean side for fishery is very critical, very bad. So we need some alternatives, and aquaculture is one of the very important alternative. So also for WestMed initiative is one of the priorities, with other priorities as we can see in this slide. So in Morocco, we are in our beginning for our strategy, because we produce just less than 1,000 tons, especially in species and some shellfish. We have, for example, a Mediterranean site for active farms, and in Atlantic less than 20. But we are in the very good trend, and we found to have more or less 160,000 tons for next years. And for this, Morocco created in 2007 a specific agency for aquaculture development and sustainability, and there are some objectives to improve attractivity for this sector, because in Morocco it's difficult to have investment attractivity. It's as you know, there are lots of risk in aquaculture, and we don't have also some cultural aspects and some cultural issue to convince investigators to go to aquaculture. So in Aliotis and with ANDA, with this agency, there are lots of work done for the 10 last years, and for this year we start to have some companies, some provide companies. The strategy for the agency, there are 4 steps. The 4th step is aquaculture planification. So for all 3,500 kilometers for our coastline, we have more than 10 planification development, and we have in each part of our coastal specific aquaculture development. And also the second step is to have some legal devices, because before 2011 we didn't have any legal measures, devices. It's very important for the development of any activity. And after this, the third step is the promotion of our aquaculture. We are right now in this step, is promotion of aquaculture and also funding, because for some kind of aquaculture it's very expensive, like aquaculture. So we need provide fund and governmental fund and external international fund also. Some local projects located in Morocco, specifically in Mediterranean side, and we start with alga culture, and now we produce more or less 1,300 tons per year, but we project to produce more or less 20,000 tons per year. And for mussel projects in just for small scale fisheries, because a lot of aquaculture projects is created for small scale projects. It's not for big scale projects, especially in Morocco, in Mediterranean side, sorry. And in the WestMED initiative, the initiative contributed to introduce Moroccan stakeholders in some projects. And right now we are in a project led by National Institute from Science Technology in Tunisia. And we have other partners from Italy, Egypt, concerning a living lab for small-scale sustainable and innovative aquatic food. And the most important objective for this project is the training for new aquaculture. This is our potential opportunities. So we project in the future. So for the 5 or 6 future years to have 280 projects and 160,000 tons in pisciculture and more than 1,800 million dirhams is about 187 million euro and more or less 4,000 employment just in aquaculture. So for in the final, I can say that Moroccan government is very convinced that this aquaculture, it can be a way for employment, lots of employment, lots of added value for maritime products, and a very good alternative for fishermen who live in this moment very critical situation. Thank you. If you have any question, I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much, Maluli. Yes, aquaculture is a very important sector, and I think that it has a room for increase, and it's an important theme to cooperate within the WestMED initiative. There are some works, as you know, and I think that it's an issue where we have to increase the cooperation between different countries, because it's also a way to try to increase the sector with more technology, to try to get it more sustainable and to achieve better productivity. So it's a very important theme for the future, and I think that it's we will work about it in the next future. So I move for the final speech within the second session, and I ask Michael Adam, that is president of the Ocean Assets Institute, to give your speech about an overview of the instruments to finance the blue economy. Please, Michael.
Right. Thank you, Rui. And I'm trying to share my screen here. This will have to do. Sorry, I had a bigger version
Perfect.
I can't seem to get to. I'll try to make this to 6 minutes because you've all been so patient in waiting for me and getting through these other presentations. I will just focus on what I really do in my career and here at Ocean Assets Institute, which is make the connection between the capital markets and the blue economy and all the maritime sectors. So Ocean Assets is a nonprofit group. We're based in Switzerland, but work all over the world, do financial research and advisory work for multilateral banks and governments, as well as financial institutions, investors themselves. Those are some of the projects we are working on. Currently, the ones on the right side, Asian Development Bank, the UNEP Finance Initiative, Climate Bonds Initiative, are keeping us quite busy. But we started on the left with the European Commission's Blue Economy Investment Platform, or Blue Invest, which is closely connected, of course, to the WestMED initiative and all the good things happening in Portugal right now. So again, I'll try to focus on who are the investors and what do they need and what's their mood right now as they look at the blue economy. So to simplify, here we have 7 types of investors, and it's in kind of a descending order from the sort of the size of assets they have, as well as the length of their liabilities. And that relates to the time horizon, the patience they have to wait for their investment return and for their exit. So it's wonderful if you get pension funds, insurance companies from the insurance side, the sovereign wealth funds to invest, because they do have longer term horizons and they will follow substantial initiatives by the European Commission and European Investment Bank and other public funders. The reality for many of the innovators from the kinds of aquaculture companies and tourism, small, medium enterprises that we've been hearing about today is that they're at the lower end of the scale here. And these are with private equity firms, wealth managers, family offices, and the like, who want to see their return in a much shorter, under 5-year time frame, and exit those investments within that time frame as well. So it's very important to keep in mind what is your offering, because you have to adapt to the investors that you feel are most likely to be interested in your offering and to their time frame. The next, I've got a couple of slides here that are very recent surveys of the investment climate out there. And so this is post first wave of COVID. This survey from Preqin, I'm sorry I don't have a footnote attributing to them, that's an error. Preqin, P-R-E-Q-I-N, is a private equity and alternative investment database. So the good news is, even after the first wave of COVID shock, and that was a very big shock for the investment markets, like for all of us, there was only up to 10% decline in the commitments that these investors were seeing over the next 12 months. So the key asset classes of private equity, private debt, and infrastructure, and those are key because they really drive most of the blue economy things we're talking about, will continue to increase over the next year. So they do have time frames that may not be 30 years, but they're in the 5-year range or a little more, and they're still seeing growth in most of the segments that they're looking at. As I mentioned, their natural resources being the only one, because of the vulnerability to commodity cycles, that is not projecting increased investments over the next year. So it's roughly good news. You don't have a retreating investment climate, even though we have a retreating economy. This is so recent, the UNEP FI Finance Initiative, that is survey of for the Sustainable Blue Economy Finance Principles. This is so recent that you're the only ones to see this outside of our little group that that did this. So don't tell anybody, but it's useful information. This will be published in the early part of next year. Over 100 institutional investors responded to this survey. So there were a lot of parts of this survey. Here's just one snapshot that I thought was interesting. So the two biggest risks that these institutions see when they're looking at the investment opportunities are climate change, and as that was pointed out earlier, that's a systemic risk that or a macro risk that affects us all, and policy and regulatory changes. Well, that one is one that we can control a bit more. And so when you have a favorable investment regulatory framework, as is envisioned by the WestMED initiative and certainly by Portugal's initiatives around the blue economy, that is very, very important for investors and can reduce some of the other perceived risks that they have. So, and here, of course, you're looking at systemic risks and macroeconomic risks, what investors end up, pulling the trigger on finally is of course, has to do with the individual company and the individual offering and what the risks are there, the quality of management, their business plan, the barriers to entry and so forth, intellectual property. So overall, that's the picture. What are they investing in? What kind of instruments? Well, most of it is in corporate, standard corporate financing, as well as project financing. And that one, the project financing is where you have big opportunities with the WestMED vision for public-private projects, where there's some element of public capital and maybe some donor capital that is on a concessionary level, where it's going to be lower than, these are investors that want to see impact returns, they want to see job creation, they want to see sustainability improvements, less pollution and so forth. And they're willing to pay for that. In other words, give capital that is at a free level or under market rates for whatever it may be. And that will attract private investors because they are offsetting a lot of the risk of the project. So the more that the individual companies out there and individual projects can aggregate so that you can get into a larger scale project finance, where the assets are getting up into the 10s, 50s, 100 millions size, the more you're going to be able to reduce risk for investors and attract longer term capital. What are the opportunities and barriers? This is from the Responsible Investor magazine or online publication that was done last year. Here, what I'd like to pay attention to on this one is the barriers there at the bottom, because I am trying to compress the time here. And what are the barriers that the investors see to getting more involved in the blue economy? Because after all, SDG 14 is the last on the list for investment capital at this point. Well, it's for the lack of investment grade projects. Doesn't mean that there aren't projects out there and that they're not very good ones, but that meet the projects that meet the requirements of those institutional, mostly, investors. And the lack of internal expertise. They don't know about aquaculture. The issues that Maluli was just talking about, this is new, even though aquaculture has been the fastest growing segment of the agribusiness for 20 years, at some 7% a year. There's still a lack of understanding of that versus land-based kinds of agribusiness, for instance. And the lack of blue products, funds and bonds and platforms that are specifically or have an allocation to some of these blue or maritime sectors. So that's something to be aware of, that as you prepare the plans for projects across the WestMED and other blue economy initiatives here, that we keep that end in mind. And the reason I do spend a lot of time talking about private investors is that usually is the end game here, in that we can count on Portugal and we can count on Brussels to come up with a certain level of funding, but it's not going to be 100%. In fact, we know that 90% of the capital needed to accomplish the SDGs each year, 90% has to come from the private capital markets. So we have to begin with that end in mind. Next slide is about corporate investment, because usually we talk about investors and we imagine someone sitting in a bank or a private office somewhere, and he's going to, he or she going to be your angel and will invest purely for an investment return reason. Well, so much of the investment in the maritime sectors comes from the industry itself, obviously. Yet that's not one lump of type of investor either. There are 7 different types of corporate investments that happen, and that we've broken down here on that box on the left, ranging from strategic ventures to how to expand in their industry, and each one of those has a different set of criteria that they're looking for. Just for one example, strategic ventures, where you can partner if you're a smaller innovator, or you can partner with a larger company or with a private equity fund to get some technical support as well as capital for you. And there are many advantages to that, and there are also some risks to that. That I point out there at the bottom. The corporates may have an unfair advantage, and they may want to acquire your intellectual property without investing capital account, which is somewhat not, and I say this not critical at all. On the example of Wärtsilä, the shipbuilders, their digital ventures, they have a whole department that is extremely well managed, that's involved in doing partnerships with innovators across maritime digital technology especially. And they don't make any capital investments, at least not any without having their people directly involved. They're really interested in that technology transfer and being part of it and helping a company succeed. And they're not going to steal, and they're not going to do anything that is a violation of their agreement with the company, but that is their agenda, to own as much of it as they can, and to invest money only in their own businesses. So you have to go in with your eyes open. Yet in sectors like shipping, for instance, and even fishing, most of the investment that happens there does not happen from outside passive investors. It happens from the industry. So in fact, you do need to understand what that corporate landscape is. And I like the way so many of the blue economy initiatives across Europe and WestMed are involving industry directly from the beginning. This I would take, we've already talked about who has favorable and who has less favorable or more challenging outlooks going forward, but investors do try to forecast where's the growth going to be, and which are the areas that have favorable winds behind you instead of headwinds, for instance, that we see clearly, as Stephanie pointed out, in the tourism sector, but you see it across so many sectors now because of the pandemic. So that is also where you're going to get more favorable support from the private capital markets. I think that's it. Yes, it is. Good. How did I do on time? Happy to take questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael, for a very interesting presentation, very clear. It's an overview of the type of instruments, expected investments, risks, opportunities, barriers, sectors expanding, sectors contracting. So a lot of things that I think that we shall have in mind in the future when we think how to finance blue economy and new projects in WestMed. I would like to ask all the speakers if we can diffuse your PowerPoint presentations, because I think that it's material that would be interesting to share with other people. So if you agree,
yes, no problem.
Okay, thank you very much. It's okay for you, Michael, also?
Yeah,
yes?
That was thumbs up. I'll
Okay.
turn off my microphone.
Okay. Well, I don't know if there is some question, please. Well, we are 10 minutes late, but if there are some questions, someone want to put a question, please. In the chat, I think that we have no questions. So if not, I think that we move to the last block of our session. About new ideas and new projects for the WestMed initiative. So we ask all the national hubs to prepare at least one idea to present here. So the objective of the project, some description, potential partners, and to present here to everybody. And the idea is that these proposals will nourish, will feed our work in the future. So it's a way to nourish our pipeline of projects that should be developed within the WestMED initiative, the work between the central team and the national hubs. So I ask Marta Pascual from the National Hub of Spain. Marta, if you want to present your idea, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us to present a few of the projects that we are all assisting. Let me just share them one.
Marta, we are not hearing you very well.
Okay.
The sound is very low.
Okay, let me try change. Is it better now? Is it better?
A little bit.
Now? Yes?
Yes, more or less, yes.
Okay. Okay, so you're seeing the presentation now? Yes. Okay. So with regards to some of the project proposals that we are working on, especially the Spanish National Hub is supporting one project idea called WestMED. And I will just briefly like to highlight this project idea. WestMED is a project that is coordinated by the Maritime Cluster of Andalusia, and it aims to find new discard management models for the Western Mediterranean fishing grounds. So the main objective is that within this objective that we all have in the WestMED initiative of building a stronger cooperation between all the stakeholders on the Mediterranean, in this case, this cooperation is towards the management of discards. So the overall goal is to characterize the knowledge that exists and it has not been gathered in terms of discard management, to analyze innovative ways for sustainably recover some of these practices to try to avoid discards, and in case that discards arrive to the port, find new management practices and valorization models for these species. The Spanish National Hub is kindly supporting the coordinator, and we are in contact with the other WestMED initiative national hubs in order to advance in this idea. So what is the problem? In this case, there is the context where the fishing sector has a new landing obligation since January 2019, they have the obligation to bring to port all the species that they caught. This makes, this has created a problem because there is a high amount of fish discards that are landed in the ports, and sometimes there is no direct market for these species. At the same time, the discards that arrive to the ports are not gathered into a common database in the Western Mediterranean. So it's very hard to know which species, how much species, which biomass of species arrive where. So previous efforts from Discardless project that was an Horizon 2020 project and other European projects have pushed for modeling some of these discards and trying to get models of how many discards were happening, and also have kind of gathered this information through surveys, but there has not been a systematic data gathering of discards. At the same time, there is different applications of the landing obligations between the North and South WestMED countries. So with this project in WestMED aims to map the discards, so to know which species, how much species, and where they are landing, so as to create an atlas of discards, analyze what is being discarded, and trying to create, of course, the technologies to try first to avoid these discards. But then once they arrive to the port, propose new management and valorization models, business models for these discarded species, along with retailers, restaurants, etc. And of course, these solutions should come directly with a direct participation of the stakeholders, because the end client will be the one trying to value and valorize these new species. So far, this project, the next step is to try to see if this project could go to the Blue Economy and Blue Invest call that Javier mentioned before, that it has just been launched and the deadline is in February. We will try to see if this project idea could go to this Blue Economy window, Blue Invest call. And for that, we will increase the consortia partner. Right now, we do have Spain, France, and Malta, but we will increase some of these consortia partners to other WestMED countries and work on the proposal towards the submission. For that, we will be in the info day of this call. And you can, if you're an SMEs or if you're a data provider of these cards, or if you would like to get involved in this consortium and this project idea, please either contact me or contact directly the CMMA, the cluster of Andalusia, so as to get involved in this project proposal towards submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta, for this interesting idea. I think that I'm in condition to say that we have some Portuguese stakeholders also interested in the project, so we will take contact with you later on. Thank you very much. Now we move to France. Frederic, please, the project.
Yes.
5 minutes,
good.
If possible.
Yes, so it will be short on my side. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Pleased to be with you. The project that we propose is already a project that which were raised interest during the last event, which was organized in Palermo and submitted to the Sommet des Deux Rives. It's related to the promotion of circular aquaculture in the WestMED. It has been raised by my colleagues and particularly by Madhuri, but it may be also raised in the next webinar that WestMED will organize regarding aquaculture in mid-December on this. The idea is to find alternative way to feed farm fish, in a particularly based on flower-based and farm insects, for which you may like that get rid of or some effects to have to feed you fish with wild fishes, and like that you reduce the footprint. In this way, also to develop new species such as herbivorous fishes for aquaculture productions in accordance to make a strong sustainability principles and expectation for this. And of course, including all in this process, including in this process within the multi-trophic production chains, which is a key component and for which all the countries, even from the north and from the south, can promote these actions. These actions will therefore be supported or could be supported with already engaged stakeholders. Some of them already been interested to promote these ideas in France, but they were also shared with southern countries. So I think that within this project, we have an opportunity at the same time, as already said by the previous speakers, to work on to meet some SDGs 14, for instance, to find solutions for which southern countries can also meet their objectives regarding food security in these countries, and then to share experience from north to the south. Is the key idea that we have between all of us is also to make capacity building and transfer knowledge from north to the south to the countries based on this solution, taking also into account the lesson learned from North production in order to be sure that we will not regularly taking at least the best practice and not to replicate the mistakes that we may have sometimes regarding with sometimes not so much sustainable production. So here we are for this project. Well, for now, it's still pending on to way to find solution to fund this project. But I think that we are really strongly in line with WestMED and the FAO guidance in the area, and so we can easily guess that thanks to the scoping that we are doing and thanks to the network of national hub, we will be able to find at the same time right partners and the right funding to support these activities, which is really and the ideas, which is already an idea we fully shared with all the two shores. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frederick. As we saw previously, a very important theme for WestMed. And I think that we'll find some other stakeholders interested in the project. I think that from Portugal, so we have some interested people. We have to see how to finance this project. It's always a question. Well, we move to Tunisia, to Salem Miladi. Please, Salem, the floor is yours. 5 minutes to present the project, please.
Ok, merci. Je vais essayer de partager la présentation. L'objet un peu de cette idée de projet, c'est que dans les pays du Sud, il n'y a pas. Il existe, ces clusters ne sont pas très expérimentés. Je prends le cas de la Tunisie. Notre cluster a été créé il y a pratiquement une année. Donc, sans revenir sur les missions des clusters, tout le monde connaît cela, mais ils sont nécessaires pour un peu développer l'économie bleue et surtout défendre un peu les professionnels pour les activités qui travaillent donc dans la mer. Mais on a remarqué que malgré une année, c'est vrai qu'il y a pas mal de partenariats qui ont été des accords de partenariat avec Big Italy, avec aussi cluster maritime français, avec Pôle Méditerranée. Bon, il y a eu différents accords de partenariat, mais quand on voit de plus près, on voit que ce cluster n'est pas très développé pour aller de l'avant. Donc, il manque quelque chose, il manque du professionnalisme. Et je crois que des projets, moi j'ai proposé un jumelage. Pourquoi un jumelage? Parce que comme vous le savez, Stéphanie l'a dit, Isabelle l'a dit tout à l'heure, notre projet n'est pas un projet qui a de l'argent, c'est pas un projet, c'est une initiative, c'est plutôt une stratégie. Donc la Commission a annuellement une enveloppe pour les jumelages de l'ordre de 11 à 14 millions d'euros par an. Donc c'est facile de trouver le financement de ces programmes de jumelage. Quand je parle de jumelage, c'est-à-dire par exemple un cluster du Nord se met d'accord avec un cluster du Sud pour faire ce travail de jumelage. L'objectif étant de voir ces clusters, comment à l'intérieur des pays doivent trouver de l'argent pour se financer eux-mêmes, pour faire une feuille de route. Comment travailler, comment élaborer leur structure, comment faire une feuille de route pour devenir de plus en plus opérationnel. Donc, moi, l'idée, c'est essayer de faire des projets de jumelage entre un ou plusieurs clusters du Nord avec un ou plusieurs clusters du Sud. Et l'enveloppe, elle est annuelle à la Commission pour le jumelage. Il y a aussi le programme TAIEX de la Commission européenne qui peut aussi financer ce genre de projet. Voilà, je ne veux pas trop parler. Bon, ça, je peux les passer en 5 minutes. Merci, Sophia. Vous pouvez les passer, c'est 5 slides seulement. Donc là, c'est la présentation du cluster tunisien et les fondateurs. Le slide d'après, Sophia, s'il vous plaît.
Próximo.
Peço desculpa, mas o meu computador bloqueou. Não consigo.
Ok. Alors, je sais
Non,
pas.
c'est pas grave. De toute manière, l'idée de projet, c'est carrément de créer des jumelages entre les clusters de la rive nord avec les clusters de la rive sud, avec un financement, et le financement existe. Moi, pour votre gouverneur, j'ai confectionné 2 projets de jumelage en Tunisie et c'est pas difficile de les faire. Et ils sont très importants pour apporter du know-how pour les clusters du sud. Voilà.
Ok. Merci, Salem. Bon, je profite aussi pour vous dire que de notre part pharmacienne, enfin, nous sommes le portugais National Hub, mais nous sommes aussi un cluster reconnu par le gouvernement portugais, cluster de la mer au Portugal, et nous sommes prêts, si vous voulez, à s'engager dans ce jumelage. On pourra en reparler plus tard parce qu'on est disponible pour partager notre expérience avec vous et avec d'autres. OK?
C'est très bien.
OK. Bon, merci bien. On passe sorry. Now we move to Malta. Stephanie.
Yes, hi. Hi, everyone again. Okay, so the project which we are proposing is basically the development of an idea which came out through the hackathon as well, which was developed through the WestMED initiative. And it mainly focuses on the development of an innovation platform for maritime clusters. We consider this obviously to be important because, as all of you know, cluster initiatives are a very important mechanism in terms of boosting innovation, as well as providing access to sustainable financing. And while there has been an increasing number of cluster initiatives, which is quite noticeable across the Mediterranean, there tends to be a lack of common platform or a lack of common space where to share these innovation challenges as well as the opportunities. And here the emphasis of the project would be on the transfer of knowledge as well as capacity between the partners. And here obviously the emphasis is as well in terms of tying in ties and opportunities for the southern partners. So the objective is in terms of promoting even further cross-border collaborations, and in terms of accelerating as well the adoption of effective cluster initiatives. The actions are mainly focused on 4 main areas, and they are basically sharing practices, know-how and expert insights. Very importantly, the setting up and maintenance of a permanent infrastructure for dialogue and effective dialogue between all of the cluster organizations and between the partners which would be involved in the project. Supporting the members of the clusters, most notably the SMEs and the micro enterprises, through a range of coaching and mentoring service activities, whether it's business skills, marketing, building convincing proposals, as well as increasing opportunities for members of the clusters for business growth. Again, here I emphasize that the importance of the project is in terms of building collaboration across clusters between all partners in the WestMed, so the partners which are in Europe as well as the southern partners in this regard as well. The expected duration of the project is envisaged to be about 30 months. Key challenge is in finding the funds for the project, because obviously we need to tap into funds which would allow our southern partners to be able to be beneficiaries as well. And in terms of the project partners which are being envisaged in the project, there's a list of stakeholders varying from, for example, cluster organizations, chambers of commerce, and notably, obviously, other stakeholders which would be involved in cluster development.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie, for this interesting idea. I think that this platform platform would be important to promote the cross-cooperation, cross-border cooperation between the clusters, and it's something that we have to work and go forward in the future. And now we move to Italy, to Leonardo Manzari. Please, Leonardo, the floor is yours. I think that you have 2 projects. I ask you to be brief.
Brief as possible. Okay, no, absolutely. Thank you, Rui. Thank you, Federico. Thank you, Sofia, for inviting us and giving us this opportunity, useful to stay together and speak together and exchange. It's not the case that, of course, according to the priorities which have been set also during these 2 years, green shipping and clusters are at the center of our attention. That's why we are promoting, we have targeted the next clusters go international call deadline December 2nd, on which we are already working on a project which is targeting as 3rd countries, since they are not COSME countries, Tunisia and Morocco, for cooperation with an alliance of Northern Shore countries. At this time, we have confirmation from Italian cluster and Andalusian cluster, and of course we are open to other northern maritime clusters. This is a project which is going to be focused on recreational boating, and which is already seeing the interest of the Tunisian cluster and Moroccan consortia. So of course we are looking for further northern clusters to join. Of course, as many of you also from Malta and Portugal know, we have been in touch with this in these days. Regarding the green shipping, as you know, we are of course identified, thanks to our technical group, some priorities, and therefore we have targeted on the H 2020 Green Deal the 5.1 call, and on this we are of course putting together a number of 4 ports to go through a project on energies in the ports, and of course on the subject of energy communities, if it will be possible. And of course, until now we have been able to put together Italy, Morocco and Romania, and we are waiting for further let's say countries to join. And of course these 2 projects are open to let's say further partners to join. So thank you very much. I am available in case you have stakeholders to mention or to join. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonardo. Well, the time is short. To December is tomorrow, but if there are someone interested, I think that there are yet room of maneuver to include in the project. So now we move to the.
We are quite forward in the project. So a further stakeholder will be welcome. So we are not starting now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, Portugal, and ask my colleague Ruben Eiras to present the one idea coming from Fórum Oceano. Ruben, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
5 minutes.
Yes. So good afternoon to you all. So very briefly, what is the idea? It's the WestMED Smart Ports Blue Acceleration Network. So the idea here is to establish an innovation blue economy network in the ports network of the WestMED. What happened? Oh,
hello.
Sphere. It says here that Fórum Oceano.
Yes, because you were not sharing the template, you were sharing your email. Sorry, hold on.
I was sharing my
It's
email.
okay now. Now it's okay.
Okay.
Ah, okay. Okay. So, going back, so I was saying, so there is, so the idea is to build an innovation, I would say, network in the ports network of the WestMED for accelerating new blue businesses in sustainable ocean economy. So the ports are usually seen only in their core functions as only for cargo and passenger handling, but in fact they are the main interfaces between land and sea. And also they have a permanent and facilitated access to the sea. So they are the area for innovation for blue economy, for startups to be installed and to test the solutions of the startups with I would say less costs and more with a faster speed to market. Also, this would enable to install the startups in conjunction with more mature industries and conventional industries from the blue economy, thus enhancing the knowledge transfer and innovation spillovers between the conventional industries and the startup industries. Also, for investors, this will give a better context for investment, because the environment for doing the investment in several areas of the blue economy will be similar, and will have an operation context that will be similar. The main advantage is that in the WestMED countries, they have a series of sectors where the ports can cooperate in a network basis and in a complementary basis. So especially the mid-sized ports. So the idea will be to identify what are the hubs in the blue economy hubs where the ports of the WestMED could cooperate: aquaculture, green shipping, tourism, fisheries and aquaculture, for example. And then launch, I would say, not only a digital platform for aggregating those, I would say, communities and in those areas of blue economy hubs, and then launch an acceleration program in the WestMED area for selecting startups that in a 9-month cycle would be selected for being financed and then installed the ports. So the potential partners who can be part of this platform will be ports, the blue accelerators, blue economic clusters, blue incubators, and regional organizations that can gather stakeholders. Regarding the funding, we can access the MFF grants. We have the Interreg mechanisms that can also finance this, I would say, initiatives, EASME, and some regional funds grants under the EU Green Deal. So this is, in a nutshell, well, the idea of the WestMED Smart Ports Blue Acceleration Network, to build a kind of a blue Silicon Valley in the WestMED area, which I think will be a very good way to ramp up sustainable blue businesses between Europe and its neighbors from North Africa.
Thank you very much, Ruben. I think that what you presented is aligned with the suggestion of Isabelle Vialon, because it's this project is the idea is to replicate another experience we are developing in the Atlantic area. So it's just a way to reinforce the connections between the two areas. And it was a point stressed by Isabelle Vialon, and I think that you are in this sense. So I don't know if Javier, are you with us? Do you want to comment something? Do you want to add something?
Well, maybe just to repeat what I previously said about the dynamics of cooperation that are being created and stimulated by the systems mechanism team. And in this regard, and just to reinforce the messages provided by my colleagues, for the thematic fields of green shipping and sustainable transport, we will have in the next meeting of the technical group next week. So this is a well-established way of cooperation, if you want to label it like that. And we will be having identified webinars for tourism, where Stephanie Bella and our National Hub from Mauritania, Mohamed Lemine, would be kind of chairing the session. We will also be building, as Leonardo Mansari noted, next 30th of November on cluster development, looking at the COSME call for proposal, but also we do have the aquaculture field of activity also in our horizon of future activities, which the ultimate objective of creating new project ideas, and that, as Isabelle Vialon was saying, need to be in fierce competition, I would say, with others. So that's why we need these project proposals to be really well aligned with all the existing strategies, with the programs, and meeting the expectations, the real expectations that the European programs or the multilateral programs that we will be applying for are looking for, from these projects. So the message is that this is what is happening in this last quarter of the year, but there will be much more happening during the first semester of the coming one. Always looking at the further project development and building up from what we said, what the capitals want as member states and partner countries, but also what the stakeholders and the practitioners are also planning to achieve for the sustainable development of the blue economy. So thank you very much, Rui.
Thank you, Javier. And I think that your intervention is a good way to close this webinar. I'm looking if there are some questions in the chat. There are some questions and some answers. So I think that we can close. I thank you very much, the speakers, and also all the participants. The materials of the workshop will be available in our website, and I think that they are important to feed our work in the future. And so stay well and stay with us with B2Sea. We have a program until next Friday. So thank you very much. Okay, bye-bye.